All right, man. So let's talk a bit about the NBA. Our home team, Raptors, not looking so good. Sitting at 2-7. Haven't really looked good. Choked away. Made a valiant effort in the fourth last night, but at the end just came up short. I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of cheering for them to lose, but that's fine. So that kind of begs the question,
Hmm.
like especially what I've been thinking about. Should
Hmm.
Raptors at this point start thinking about tanking the season and just restarting, maybe trading away Lowry or something, and just restarting next season with a new draft pick and then go from there? What are your thoughts?
Cheering for them to lose. Cheering for his hometown team to lose. You know what? As a sports fan, that hurts my heart. That doesn't sound just quite right to me. I think the idea of tanking in professional sports is counterproductive. I understand why teams do it. It's unfortunately the smart way to rebuild nowadays. It's the best way to go about hitting the reset button and truly putting yourself or trying to put yourself on the track of becoming a contender. With the Raptors, though, I maybe it's my moral compass, but I don't think the Raptors should tank. I don't think any team should tank. You look at the Jacksonville Jaguars in the NFL this year. They won one game, and it looked, at least to a lot of people, that yes, they were devoid of talent, but it didn't look like they were trying to win a lot of the games that they were in, especially when they were close. And I think for me, like I said, that just goes against the whole point of competitive professional sports. I think if you're in the league, you're there to win. You're there to put your team in the best position to win every single night. And I just, especially in the NBA, it's one thing to tank in the NFL, where you have a set draft order where the team with the absolute worst record is decided and it's set in stone that they will pick first.
Right.
In the NBA, you have more of a luck aspect, and that is exactly what the lottery entails. So I think the NBA has found a way to somewhat decent deter teams from tanking because you do have a lottery aspect in there. I mean, we saw the Knicks 2 years ago when they were trying to tank for Zion Williamson, and it didn't end up working out in their favor. They finished with the worst record in the league, but they didn't necessarily get the number one overall pick, and hence missed out on Zion. So I think there's a lot of potential for that to backfire on teams. We also know that good competitive professional players don't like to stay on losing teams. Now, whether or not that is an argument against or for tanking, I'll leave that up to you. To me, that would be an argument against tanking. You don't want to give the impression to your best players, to your main guys, especially people who are used to winning, who have been there in Toronto with the winning culture. You don't want to give them the impression that you're putting forth less than 100% for the team to win and you're not putting the team in the best position to win as much as you can. I think that can start an unfortunate culture of losing, which a couple of years ago we saw a lot of in Toronto. And I think you do your
Couple of
best
years
as a
ago. It's been a long time, man. We've been good for quite some time now.
define good because they were getting to the playoffs, second round, maybe conference finals, but I don't think anyone ever saw Toronto as a true title threat until the year that they won it. And even then, you can argue that a lot of people were underestimating them. But
Even
yeah,
then, though, that's only true like for like I don't know, like three, four teams in the league at the most out of 30. So I think if you're just making it to the second round conference finals, I think you're good. Like you're solid. Like you're on your way. Like we had a young
you're
team at
yeah
that
you
point.
you're solid, right? You're solid, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can be a title contending team year in and year out. And yeah, I'm going way back now. I'm talking 10, 8, 12 years ago when the when the Raptors were more of a struggling franchise. So I just don't think you really wouldn't want to set that losing tone in any sport that you play, in any team that you're the head of. Tanking, yes, can have its direct benefits, but for me, I think it's just maybe it's the love of the game. Maybe, like I said, it's my moral compass.
Love of the
But
game.
love of the game. But I just don't want to see teams tank. I just don't want to see teams tank on purpose and trying to nail the best prospect. Although I will admit, with the way that things are now, especially with so much player empowerment, I think that's almost a smart thing to do. Why? What do you think? I know you said you were
I'm
cheering for them to lose,
I'm
but
I'm I'm all
you're
for it,
all on
man.
the
I'm
tank.
all for it. I would look. I'm not about the mediocrity. Like I'm not
Mm,
about the mediocrity. I'd
mm,
rather be absolute trash for 1 year,
mm.
and we get one of the top prospects next year. You build put that aside beside OG, Fred, even Pascal. I've kind of fallen out of love with him too now at this point. He's
I
kind
think
of
a
like
lot of
hit and
people are.
miss, hit and miss. Like he just doesn't have the same motor anymore. He's just lazy. It almost seems like he doesn't really care about the game and that much anymore now that he's like gotten paid. I don't know. I don't know if teams are just have a better understanding of what kind of player he is and they're just defending him a lot better. Or to me, when I watch the games, he just like last year from the bubble time onwards, he just looks like a guy who just doesn't have that love for the game anymore. He's just out there like the hustle, like the hustle and like tenacity and the love for the game is what you see in Chris Boucher right now. That guy comes off the bench, like he
Mm.
fouls out, which he did last night, but before that, he was owning all literally all the bigs for Golden State.
He makes an impact.
He does make an impact. Like he comes out with energy and hunger. Like he hasn't really gotten paid that much. He got like a 2 year extension, like a very mediocre, nothing too crazy. So he's still trying to make that money, and trying to make that his own imprint on the game. Whereas I think Pascal kind of is like, I've gotten paid, made more money than I could ever imagine, and just so at this point, I wouldn't be even surprised if like we're just trying to build up his trade value and just trade him. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Masai is trying to do. At the same time, I think Lowry's last season in his contract, I think we should just like around trade time, trade deadline time, when teams are a bit more hungry, they think we're just a point guard away, a veteran point guard who can play solid defense, shoot the ball, command the team, be a solid leader. He brings every quality that you want in a championship team that's looking for a point guard. Uh, Trying to find that trade partner, I think, is a bit of a question mark. I think Clippers would be perfect, but I just don't think they have the trade pieces to be able to get
Oh,
them
for the
compared to some of
Raptors,
the
yeah.
other teams that are in the NBA. But I think that's what it is. I'm all for it. I don't support mediocrity. I just don't want another year of where we go to the first round, losing the first round. Or some people are saying trade for James Harden. I'm like, I don't really want that. What are we gonna do? Get to the second round and lose in the second round? What's the point? And then in 2 years he leaves. Like, what's the point of trading for James Harden? What makes you think he'll be any better than what he's been in Houston Rockets?
No,
They've given,
no.
they've given him another top player, one after the other, and he's every player just like, okay, I don't want to play with him anymore. And one player that did want to play with him, he didn't want to play with him, Chris Paul. Person I compare James Harden to is modern day Will Chamberlain, where he'll just give you 30, 40 points easy. Like that's just he does that in his sleep. Like he just comes in like he came like in the worst shape possible, still dropped
Yeah.
40 in his first
Still
game.
got buckets. Yep.
Exactly. The guy is a walking bucket. He does everything, rebound, assist, but he's not that player that you're gonna win with. Like you want to build your team around him for a championship. So that's why I'm all in for tanking. I was actually very happy. I was kind of sad at one point. I'm like, yeah, they made the comeback. They were up, and Larry fouled right on cue, and the guy was clutch with ice in his vein, makes the two free throws. I'm like, yes, let's go. And then
Yes, let's go.
Pascal,
Another L.
Pascal gets a shot in and out. I'm like, yeah, let's go, let's go.
That's what we need
We're
from you,
starting. We're
Pascal.
starting the tank. We're starting
That's
the
what we need
tank.
from Pascal.
Like hit some shots like in that like that would have helped his trade value, but come on man, it can't have you hitting that shot, you know.
Need
Oh,
that other L.
so I don't think Raptors as a franchise would want to tank, or they want to put in that mentality of tanking. I don't think that's what Masai is about, or nor Nick Nurse, but I
Hmm.
think they will kind of indirectly tank by trading away, let's say, Lowry, um, kind of trying out some more of their younger pieces as we go through the season. And my whole point is, what's the point of going to the playoffs, losing in the first or second round, having to pick in the 20s? You're not going to get a crazy good player at that position. Like a generational type, or even like an all-star type. You very rarely get those players in the 20s and the late 20s or early 20s, or even in the late teens. Uh, so like then you're right back next year in the same exact same spot where you'll just get bounced in the first round again. So what's the point? Just be trash for 1 year, get that one pick, pair that up with OG, Fred. even maybe Pascal if he is still there, and then let's start building a newer team, a newer franchise with a newer identity where Lowry's not there anymore. Fred takes over that role, and then we go from there. I just that's just not me. That I just want to see a first or second round exit every year after we were one of the top four seeds every year. That's just not it.
Listen to this spoiled fan. He's not content with making the playoffs. Oh, making the
Absolutely not.
playoffs. First, second round exit. Oh, why would I want that? Oh,
That was good. Like that's good when you're coming out of losing, but when you've been at that apex, you ask a Warriors fan, do they are they okay with not making the playoffs last year? I'm sure they were that they got Wiseman, but now do you think they want to miss the playoffs again this year? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
exactly. Do you think the Warriors should tank too then? Since they're not necessarily, they might not necessarily be making it to the NBA Finals 5 years straight, like a
I
couple of years
just
ago.
I just don't think they're talented enough where they'll
Mm,
indirectly end up
mm,
tanking, but I don't think they're going
mm,
to intentionally try to tank, especially with Draymond Green on that team. I don't think you
mm.
can ask that guy just like go out there and tank. Or Steph Curry, what are you going to tell him? We're trying to waste another year of your prime, like literally
Well,
one of the last years of your prime. We were just trying to waste it.
that's exactly what I'm saying with tanking in general. Toronto is an interesting team in terms of this discussion because number one, you have Masai Ujiri, who has been able to find serviceable players either late in the first round or in the second round or just completely undrafted free agents. So Masai doesn't necessarily need a high draft pick to find guys to plug in and make work in the system. Number one. Number two, Toronto is also an interesting team when it comes to this discussion because they don't have a lot of free agency pull. There are a lot of people who do not want to come to Toronto because it involves crossing north of the border. American players don't necessarily like to come to Canada and live in Toronto. Now, I think Toronto is I'm biased, but I think Toronto is a beautiful multicultural city. And I think a lot of people would actually be quite attracted to living in Toronto if they had spent some time there. But that is always going to be a negative of the Raptors, trying to convince marquee free agents to come to their market and play for their team. So I can see why tanking might look like a resolution, but like I said, I just don't think that's the way to go. I don't think that's who Masai is. I don't think you want to establish a losing culture like the Raptors had for so many years. And you definitely don't want to send that message to the players. As you just said, Golden State, I know Steph Curry is a superstar player, one of the best point guards of all time, undoubtedly, even though some people might not like the sound of that. I think it's hard to sell players on that. Professional competitive players, most of them will not be up for losing on purpose. And so it becomes kind of a slippery slope because how do you manage their
See,
expectations, but
we're
at the
we're
same
not we're
time
not
try
really
to set out
talking,
the future?
but we're not really talking about Golden State. They're in a completely different situations where I think they'll indirectly end up tanking just because they don't have that much talent to begin with to compete in the West. We're talking about the Raptors, and I think they're in a very unique situation where they can actually tank, and it won't be like a direct tank, and everybody will kind of understand what they're doing.
Hmm. You think the
So
players will understand?
I think players will understand. Yes,
It's
I'm
hard
not
to sell
saying
players on losing, my
no,
friend.
and
I
I'm
I
not saying we're gonna do that 9 games into the. Let's like tomorrow just set all our starters and just start playing our bench players. I'm not saying that. But like as we progress into the season, I think that's something they need to take very seriously and actually start tanking. Uh, okay, the tanking word sounds kind of, I think it's just more people are allergic to the word, but if they understand the principle and the situation of that team exactly like the Toronto's in, I think it's more understandable and more justifiable if that's the route they choose to go. But it really varies from team to team. Like 76ers tanked for years. Now they have two stud players on their roster.
and thanks so much for watching, you guys. It's been your boy Pablo over here with my guy Bill. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more content. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.